Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Stephen.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to the channel, and it's Monday, which means only one thing here on F1 Fanatics after race day, and that is driver ratings. It is the place where we look at the grid and give them a rating out of 10 on their performance in yesterday's race. And we'll bring qualifying a little bit into it because this week we have a special guest joining us in the driver ratings. Not only are you going to get mine and Stephen's driver ratings for the weekend, you are also going to get Tinus's from the TF1 Show, a great kind of up-and-coming F1 YouTuber and podcaster. Definitely go and check out his channel, but you're going to be handed over to him for the kind of first 10 minutes of this video and check out his ratings. So guys, we leave you in the capable hands of Tinus. Enjoy his ratings.
Hello everybody, my name is Tinus. I am from the TF1 Show and I am very excited to be on the F1 Fanatics British Grand Prix race review. So I've been asked by Mike to give my driver ratings, so I will get into that without any further ado. I guess let's start maybe with the race victor, Lewis Hamilton. I thought again a very strong season from him overall, and a very strong race performance given how hard he was pushed by Bottas, and obviously beating Valtteri by 3/10 in qualifying was also very impressive. I can't, however, say it was a flawless weekend. He did struggle a bit yesterday, let's say Saturday at least, to get up to speed despite getting pole position. So for that, I'm going to give him 9 out of 10. Now, poor Valtteri Bottas, getting a tire blow up 2 laps before the end of the race is always devastating, and I think given how strong the Mercedes is, losing 25 points to Hamilton and not scoring any is going to be a big blow to the championship. I think he was solid throughout the weekend, looked very fast on the Saturday, but lost out eventually to Lewis at the end of the day. Despite not finishing the race or scoring any points, I'm going to give him 8 out of 10 just because I think he did a decent job and really didn't make any mistakes right up until the end. Max Verstappen, a very good job from him again. I don't really think he could have done much better with the equipment that he had. I think he maximized the car's potential. He qualified as good as he could have. He placed as good as he could have. Capitalized on Bottas's mistake. So given all of that, I'm going to give him 9 out of 10 because he didn't, obviously, I wouldn't say shoot the lights out, but a very good effort from Max nevertheless. Charles, 4th place. I think maybe one of the strong drives of the weekend from Charles. He dragged that dog of a Ferrari to 4th place in qualifying firstly, which is in itself quite a good achievement. And then secondly, he was able to hold off the McLarens and the Renaults at the end to score a bit of a lucky podium, but a podium nevertheless. So I'd like to give Charles a 9 out of 10 for that effort. Sebastian Vettel, I mean, he was on the struggle bus today and during the whole weekend. I don't really think we can deny that. He struggled obviously with some niggles on his car on Friday, and then Saturday similarly, so didn't really have that much running, I guess, which did impede him. However, he was way off his teammate in qualifying and in the race, so for that I'm giving Sebastian, unfortunately, 5 out of 10. Then the other Red Bull, Alex Albon. I mean, I feel really bad for Alex. This has probably been one of his worst weekends in recent memory. It was difficult from the outset. When he crashed in FP2, it was just going to go downhill from there. Then he had the ERS issue in FP3, which then spilled over into qualifying. I think he did a decent job in recovering in the race after the penalty and the incident with Magnussen. But despite all of that, I'm still going to give him. Let's be kind. Let's give him a 6 out of 10 for the weekend because of the really strong pace that he showed in the second half of the race. The McLaren boys, I think both had a very strong weekend. Carlos, gutted for Carlos. He again, drove such a good race, qualified well, maybe not as well as Lando, but I mean, is there a better opening lap driver than Carlos at the moment? I don't think so. He made up 2 positions on the opening lap. So let's give him kudos for that, despite him, running out of steam a lap before the end of the race. I'd like to give Carlos a 9 out of 10 for a really, really good race performance. Lando, again, excellent qualifying performance after lagging behind Carlos in Q1 and Q2. Struggled a bit in the opening stints of the race. Also got overtaken by Ricciardo at the end. So for that, I'm going to give Lando 8 out of 10. Daniel Ricciardo, the Renault driver, let's maybe talk about him next. I thought he is my driver of the day. I think he really drove an intelligent race, a measured race, didn't take any unnecessary risks. Him and the Renault were blisteringly fast at the end of the race, especially over the last 5 or 6 laps. He recovered well to place fourth, which is I think his joint best performance in Renault. So let's give him a 10 out of 10 for that effort. Actually, no, let's revise that down to 9 out of 10, just because he didn't really light it up in qualifying. I think if he qualified a bit better, and I think the opportunity was there, I think he could have maybe made even more of a difference. Maybe could have gotten past Charles. So let's give him a 9 out of 10 as well. Esteban Ocon, I think this is one of his best performances so far this year. Strong throughout the race, good qualifying, not far away from Daniel Ricciardo, getting closer and closer. So let's give him a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. Let's talk about Racing Point. Now, Lance Stroll sort of joined Sebastian and Alex on the struggle bus during the race, I felt. Wasn't really ever in contention. So let's give him a 6 out of 10 for his efforts. Nico Hulkenberg, great effort to get back, with all of the drama and all of the late notice and everything going on. Was actually really close to Lance Stroll in qualifying, which I thought was an excellent effort. Obviously didn't end up racing, but let's give him a 7 out of 10, given, all of the crazy things that was going on with him. All right, who do we have left? Let's talk about AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, the little engine that could. He's doing such a good job in that AlphaTauri. Don't know whether he's going to have another chance at Red Bull, but I think making a very good account of himself. 8 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly, definitely. Daniel Kvyat, he is struggling a bit. If there are any Red Bull juniors that do well in their respective championships, I think Kvyat might have to make way for them at the end of the year. Nothing really lighting up the timing screens in qualifying or the race. So Daniel Kvyat, unfortunately, I'm going to give you a 5 out of 10. Alfa Romeo, unmitigated disaster. Giovinazzi did, I guess, did well given the circumstances, but not brilliantly. 6 out of 10 for Antonio. Kimi, again, on the struggle bus with Alex and Lance and Sebastian. I'd probably give him a 4 out of 10 because he was struggling to keep up with the Williams even. Talking about Williams, let's talk about them next. George Russell, excellent, brilliant qualifying effort again, making Q2 for the third race in a row. Race pace is still not quite there for Williams, but I think, despite the penalty in starting right from the back of the grid, he managed to get right up to P12, I think, at the end of the day with all of the, the tyre shenanigans. So good on you, George. I would like to give you a 9. Let's give him a 9 out of 10 for just really outperforming the car, and I think his teammate, comprehensively over the weekend. Speaking of Latifi, I think Latifi is getting closer. He's not there yet. He's still lagging behind George by quite a long margin, and I think George's class is really shining if you put him up against Nicholas Latifi. But all in all, a solid performance. He had a bit of a spin now that I think about it on the Saturday, so let's give him a 6 out of 10. Like, nothing too bad, but nothing brilliant either. Now I need to think who's left. Haas is left. Now, Roman Grosjean, he tried, right? He was up there mixing it with the McLarens and the Renaults, and he was making a nuisance of himself. Poor Carlos trying to get past him at some stage. So at least he was trying to get his elbows out, but he wasn't getting his elbows out very intelligently. So, got a black and white flag and then got off with a warning at the end of the day for his I mean, interesting defensive maneuvers against Carlos and against Daniel, but all in all, not a terrible performance by Roman given his standards. So let's give him a 6 out of 10. Kevin had a great start, but unfortunately was out of the race quite quickly. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give Kevin a 5 out of 10 just for, I guess, how circumstances arose. And now I need to think if I forgot any of the teams. I don't think so. I think that's everything. So yeah, that's my F1 Fanatics guest appearance race ratings. I don't know what it is supposed to be called, but there I just gave it a name. So yeah, thank you so much guys for having me on and love the show.
And those were Tinus ratings. Pretty kind of, the usual expected ones to be up there. Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo, all very good performances. We'll get round to kind of saying what we kind of rated them out of 10 in a brief time. But obviously, with Tinus, like I said, great up-and-coming F1 YouTuber. I will leave links in the description down below to his content, his channel, and obviously his Twitter handles. So please go and check him out and drop him a sub if you liked it. And thank you, Tinus, for coming on and giving your ratings. But now it's over to us. So, Stephen, I believe you're going to get the show started on the road.
I am indeed.
With Williams.
With Williams. Not too bad this weekend. P12 for George Russell and P15 for Latifi. I think we're much better race pace from both of them. 8 for George Russell and a 7 for Latifi. Not much to add on that. Just George got higher because he got P12 on merit. Because normally Williams getting that high up the table, it's because 9 other cars retired. 8 other cars. So yeah, impressive race pace from both of them.
Yeah, I think they were within a second of the rest of the field or something, or made a second up from where they were last year, which obviously is clear progress. We want to see Williams coming back and we want to see Williams doing well. So yeah, Nicholas Latifi, a kind of solid, kind of good performance from him, getting that 7 out of 10. And George Russell, I mean, you run out of words to say. Another great qualifying performance, getting into Q3 and getting P12, being able to be in the window to take advantage with good race pace of Carlos Sainz's late puncture to go up as high as 12th. Obviously, no points, but they're getting closer.
Yeah, nice finish.
I think it equals, 11th was his best result in Germany 2019 for George Russell. I thought it was going to equal his best ever Formula 1 result, but an 8 out of 10 for George Russell. Handing over to me, and we now look at Alfa Romeo. And as much as Williams have made strides forwards, Alfa Romeo have made strides backwards. Yes, hindered by the Ferrari engine clearly having a loss in horsepower from what it had in the previous season. All the kind of Ferrari-powered cars have suffered in some deficit, but Alfa Romeo seem to have suffered more on top of that. I think they failed their crash test. We've mentioned it before early season, and it really doesn't look a great car. And a driver who's really kind of struggling with things is Kimi Raikkonen, and it's really sad to see, finishing dead last in the race. This guy's a Formula 1 world champion, and it seems like with this Alfa car, his career might be going out kind of with a fizzle and not kind of going out with the heights that he did. Maybe you look at with that kind of last victory at the US Grand Prix, that might have been a good point for Kimi to kind of go out on. But yeah, it doesn't look good for him. It's a 4 out of 10 for Kimi Raikkonen this week. His Alfa teammate, Giovinazzi, out-qualified Kimi in qualifying. He beat him in the race. I think he finished P14 in the end, being split from George Russell with Carlos Sainz with his late puncture. So we're going to give Giovinazzi a 7 out of 10. He did pretty well for where that Alfa car is, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yes, moving on to Haas. And not a good day at the office for Haas. Magnussen had a great start, getting ahead of Albon in the first lap, and then the two came together. Not really Magnussen's fault. He made a little mistake, left the door open, but not really his fault. So we're not giving him a rating as that was literally the first lap. He had a great start, so maybe it could have been a great race for him. But Grosjean stayed in the whole race, didn't crash out for a change at Silverstone, but tried his best to crash out, I think it's fair to say. We're giving him a 3 out of 10 for those aggressive defensive moves on Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz. Basically, Haas left him out when everyone else pitted. Say he was up in 5th and the slowest car there, so McLaren boys and Ricciardo were all overtaking him, all over the back of him, and Grosjean was just doing his best to stop them and take them both out at any opportunity. Got a black and white flag, got given the warning. Don't think he got a penalty.
He didn't, which was a surprise because in the F3 earlier in the day, Schmoyler had his first victory in F3 taken away from him for doing very similar things. I think he actually did it a couple of more occasions and was, warned by the team on several occasions and continued to do it. But still, for an experienced driver from Grosjean, I've said it before, I think I said it in the live stream yesterday, and we'll talk about it probably in the Race Review podcast tomorrow. His heart just doesn't seem in it this season. No. He seems like frustrated. It seems like he's fed up of being near the back with Haas. He's like, what's the point?
I think his mind's already made up for this last season.
Yeah, it looks, him and Kimi Räikkönen, I would say, were in a pretty similar space in terms of both had competed at the higher end of Formula 1 and competing for P13, 14 isn't really what's appealing to them. And obviously, Grosjean finished P16 and Räikkönen finished P17. So, bad day at the office for Grosjean. 3 out of 10, wasn't it?
Yep.
So, moving back over to me and Alfa Tauri. Now, a driver who gets no rating this week is Daniel Kvyat. Alfa Tauri, just reliability issues have been there. But this is one that, on commentary, everyone said it looked like a rear wheel failure. And I think, didn't Christian Horner come over and say that during the race, that they saw some pressure difference?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Potentially on that. But anyway, there isn't any images of the kind of rear tyre giving up. Obviously, we know the Pirelli tyres did, but this was very early on in the race. So, I'm not sure if it's driver error or anything.
Yeah, Kvyat did say the data shows it was the tyre pressure.
So there we go. Yeah, I thought, the data was showing that was tyre thing, so it's unlucky for him. Could have been a good race considering the pace that his teammate showed, and that is Pierre Gasly. Now, Pierre Gasly, obviously, this time last year, he got one of his best results actually in Red Bull with a P4, but the pressure was mounting, and he didn't have a great first half of last year after a pretty good first year with Toro Rosso in Formula 1. He came back strong in the second half of last season, and he's been brilliant, I think, in all the races that he's been allowed to finish in.
Yeah.
In both Saturdays and Sundays, been brilliant. And this was a fantastic performance. And, one of his big criticisms at Red Bull was his overtaking. But, his overtaking move to get past Lance Stroll late on in the Grand Prix for me was superb in terms of what maybe his Red Bull counterpart should have done.
Yeah, he had that for Sebastian Vettel as well. So he's not overtaking, easy drivers.
No, it's fantastic. Looked after his tyres, and he was someone who just looked like he had amazing pace come the end of the Grand Prix. And look, he's a 9 out of 10 for us because brilliant race from Pierre Gasly in that Alfa Tauri. Again, getting P7 in the 2 races that he's finished. He's got P7 both times, which I think is fantastic results for where that Alfa Tauri car is.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on to where we go next, Renault?
Renault.
Let's start with Esteban Ocon. A much better day for him. He's still finished behind his teammate Daniel Ricciardo in P6. But P6, fantastic result for it. Ocon is
his best since his return, I would say.
And although he moved up positions because of the Sainz and Bottas, it was still a very good drive for him, and we're going to give him a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, a solid performance for Esteban Ocon.
And for Daniel Ricciardo, P4, 9 out of 10. Fantastic start, took Lando Norris, lost position and then took him back. And yeah, just very solid drive from Daniel Ricciardo is what you expect from a world-class driver. Again,
he's, proving that he's looking after. Yes, obviously, we'll come on to obviously Sainz next up. He was very unlucky. I think had driven a pretty good race, but seemed to kind of have the advantage, over. But the McLaren's pace seemed to drop off at the end, and Daniel Ricciardo again looked after his tyres on the longer stints. Always seems to kind of do well, and this was another kind of case where it benefited him. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we move on to the other Renault-powered car, and that is McLaren. And we've mentioned it several times during this driver rating so far. Desperately unlucky at the end. Daniel Ricciardo put pressure on Lando Norris, and Lando was saying, look, Carlos has got to speed up in front here and go from there. You hear that radio message, and the comeback from Carlos Sainz on that was, I'm feeling vibrations in the car, and that would later obviously, go on to his front left, I think it was, gave in, a bit like two other drivers further up the field with differing fortunes. It demoted him from what looked a very kind of good P5 position to outside the point. So unlucky for Carlos Sainz on that front. But it's 8 out of 10 for me. I just think he was desperately unlucky.
Yeah.
And his teammate, Lando Norris, we're actually going to go lower because Lando out-qualified. Carlos had a poor start which dropped him back, and Carlos Sainz took advantage of and wasn't really able to find any way to kind of get past Carlos going on in the race, whether that was team orders just saying maintain good points position. You don't know, because obviously Lando has benefited from team orders earlier in the season. But yeah, it was a very solid performance. Ends up being P5 in the end, losing that position late to Daniel Ricciardo. Could have been a P4. But yeah, it was another solid drive for Lando Norris, but a 7 out of 10 for this week.
Yep. Now, moving on to Racing Point. And obviously, no scoring. Nico Hülkenberg, the dream return. He'd probably be back for next weekend, but they just couldn't get his car started at the final hurdle, literally just before they were about to go out on the installation lap. His car...
He had an issue with the power unit.
Yeah, just wouldn't start. So unfortunate for him. Could have had a very good race benefiting off the late drama. But Lance Stroll, P9. P9 in the end?
Yeah, P9 in the end.
Yes, because he finished behind Albon and Gasly. Terrible. Really, in that Racing Point that's shown so much pace this season, basically didn't manage his tyres and lacked all the pace towards the end of the race. So we're going to give him a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a difficult one. We would have gone harsher considering, but obviously McLaren and Renault brought big upgrades this weekend, and with Hülkenberg not even starting the race and obviously Sergio Perez not being about, it kind of makes you go, I don't know, where is that Racing Point in context? In Hungary it looked miles ahead of the rest of them, but has these upgrades suddenly caught them up? Have they managed to make up that difference? Because I said miles ahead, but it wasn't necessarily too far ahead in terms of the ability to catch up in strength, and but maybe it was just, tracks that suited the Racing Point more to the Silverstone, because Silverstone and Hungary are very kind of different tracks, and Austria, they were closer anyway, and Silverstone was more probably closer to Austria levels rather than Hungary levels.
Yeah.
But yes, 6 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. We then move on to, which I only really just noticed in this video, we've got double Ferrari for some reason on our tops today. No particular reason, but two differing fortunes of teammates. Sebastian Vettel had a horrible weekend, as Problems with his brake pedal, didn't feel confident in the car all weekend, couldn't find a setup, and his car looked horrible to drive. So it's difficult to judge him harshly. But when his teammates got on the podium and Sebastian's barely scraped into the points, I mean, he did well to kind of hold off Valtteri Bottas on the last lap. But yeah, it's a 5 out of 10 for Seb because he was just nowhere all race, was he?
Well, started P10, finished P10. My driver of the day. No. It was just he couldn't make any progress. And when Albon and Gasly were making moves up the field, he had nothing to hold them back.
No. But we do move on to probably who is my driver of the day. But obviously we'll probably go through that tomorrow in the Race Review podcast. And that is Charles Leclerc. Now, obviously, if you said that Ferrari managed to get 2 podiums from 4 races, you'd go, okay, all right, and not really competing for race wins. In a normal season, you kind of go, okay, and the other finished there. I think it's absolutely incredible this season that Charles Leclerc in that Ferrari has got 2 podiums.
Yep.
Just unbelievable. And again, he just found this qualifying pace to be, obviously there was clearly different. Charles was really happy with the car. Sebastian Vettel wasn't happy with the car. It was just clearly 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. And again, we still don't really know where the Ferrari is. Is it more back where it's probably somewhere in between where Vettel and Leclerc are?
Yeah.
It's probably in the middle of that thing, and Leclerc is out driving it, and Vettel just can't get to grips with it whatsoever. He's just not in a happy place at all. But Charles Leclerc, 10 out of 10 drive. It's brilliant, wasn't it?
I think we said in Austria, if that Ferrari gets on the podium, it's a 10 out of 10. And he's done it again. Best of the rest.
Absolutely.
Was quicker, held off the Renaults and McLarens. Because they haven't been able to do that for, other than the first race in Austria. Leclerc managed to keep pace with them. Kept ahead.
He maintained a comfortable gap all race, didn't he?
And so, moving on to Red Bull. Alex Albon. I don't know where to start. Normally I give you the Alex Albon. Had that first lap incident with Kevin Magnussen. Too ambitious, really. Should have had a bit more patience. Had damage from that, so he had to make an early stop, and then so he was on the harder tyres, so he had to make a later stop. But good recovery drive, because I think he was at the back of the grid in that last stint, so he went on back onto the mediums. Good recovery drive into P8. Going to give him a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
Because when your teammate's in second and you're in P8, just like Leclerc being in P3 and Vettel being in P10, it's not really good enough. He had his problems that he had to deal with, but mainly caused by himself. So, 6 out of 10 for Alex Albon. Should have been better. Max Verstappen, on the other hand, P2, 9 out of 10. Had a pretty boring race. It's got to be said. Miles ahead of Leclerc. Mercedes comfortably ahead of him, maintaining the gap. Bottas obviously got his tyre deflation, so Red Bull to cover off, to try and get the fastest lap with Max, pitted him, and then Lewis then got his tyre it's a lot to cover in those last laps. Lewis then got his puncture, and then Max had this 40-second gap he had to close on one lap. Brought a bit of drama and excitement at the end, just couldn't close the gap. But solid drive from Max. Got the fastest lap, so he got that extra point. 9 out of 10. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, it was... again, like Ferrari, Red Bull, you've got 2 drivers going from differing fortunes. Vettel's probably worse off because, he's the experienced guy, where Albon is still a young guy finding his feet. And, admittedly, I'd seen Albon, it's a good recovery drive, but like Stephen said, he's making problems for himself. A good recovery drive to 8 isn't what Red Bull need. I think literally a quote from Drive to Survive Season 2 from Christian Horner is, we don't need drivers finishing P8 and P9.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the type of thing, well, I know it's just for this one race, but it's essentially what Albon is doing in your context of this season. The Red Bull, well, if Albon's where he should be, he's potentially getting a podium today.
Yeah.
To take advantage of where that Red Bull car actually is. You know, I don't think Max is obviously out driving it, and like I said, a very boring race. But I don't think, you know, that Red Bull can't afford to have that much disparity in the two cars. And Alex just isn't finding a way to perform in that car. But you have to give credit where credit's due. He's, relative for his race, he's done all right.
Yeah.
From there, but it's still not good enough for what Red Bull need. Mercedes, well, it looked like it was just dominance in qualifying again. Lewis Hamilton managed to put in kind of 2 laps after struggling a little bit, I think in Q2, having a spin, I think it was, on the medium compound, set 2 times in Q3 that could have taken pole. Just immense. Performs when he needs to. And then come race day, dominated the race and absolutely smashed it. Valtteri Bottas, on the other hand, just was that slight bit off Lewis Hamilton, and he's doing fantastic for the number 2 driver, but unfortunately, you know, for Valtteri, he couldn't. He couldn't really compete with Lewis at any point during the race, even with kind of 2 safety car restarts. Didn't challenge, and the one point he had to kind of really, you know, maybe put some pressure on something on Lewis going into turn 1, he wasn't brave enough and didn't go about it. And that maybe for me, we'll talk about it more in a race review podcast, is maybe the point he loses the championship.
Yeah.
Because he's not willing to risk it, and if he's not willing to risk it for the championship, hey, you know, what is Valtteri Bottas got to offer? And then both suffered late punches. Valtteri came first, forcing him to pit, going all the way back.
Yeah, I must say Valtteri got very unlucky with his puncture, because it was just as he passed the pit entrance, so he had to do an entire lap with 3 tyres. And yeah.
Like, was crazy. And again, I don't know, maybe harsh, but going at the end of the race, if Lewis Hamilton had this roles had been reversed and Lewis Hamilton was fighting for the point, would he have found a way past Vettel? I don't know. In terms of that, that's maybe too harsh on Bottas, but it's a 7 out of 10 because he's unlucky. Without that puncture, he comfortably finishes second. But we're now going to be harsh on Valtteri week in, week out, because the car is so far ahead that he's got to beat Lewis Hamilton to get good ratings, and he didn't even challenge him.
He's getting rated on being a world champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lewis Hamilton, we said, great weekend. Somehow managed to kind of finish that race on 3 wheels, because I think the puncture came just as he passed the pit entry.
Yeah, I think it started going after Maggots and Beckett's, but then it fully went. I'm trying to think. I think he had time to pit, but basically he stayed out.
Well, it seemed confusing. As soon as Verstappen pitted for safety, Mercedes had a free pit stop, but didn't.
Well, I think Lewis. I guess they could have.
In terms of that, but that was more Mercedes. Lewis himself somehow managed to kind of drive a 3-wheels car home, much kind of like looks to the scenes of 1988 Spa when Schumacher was on 3 wheels and was still quicker than David Coulthard out on track. Somehow he's managed to get that car home and still take victory. So, I mean, he had a massive advantage, but still, it was in a really bad state. So it's a 10 out of 10 for Lewis again in his home Grand Prix. He's doing what he needs to do. Flawless performances, and even when kind of hurdles are put in his way, somehow lesser drivers wouldn't have been able to get that home. Max would have caught them. Lewis somehow has won. No idea. But 10 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton, and that concludes another driver ratings here on F1 Fanatics. A big thank you to Tinus again for coming on and joining us and giving his ratings. It's always good, like I said, to kind of get other ratings. Hope you've enjoyed our ratings. Let us know in the comments down below. Do you agree, disagree with us, Tinus? What would your kind of ratings out of 10 be for the grid and drivers? And don't forget, you can join us tomorrow for the race review podcast, where we'll go through all the teams, round up some of the feeder series there, give our driver of the day. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail outside of the driver ratings and our race rating as well. But if you're new around here or haven't done so already, what can I do, Stephen?
They can like, they can subscribe.
I said that subscribe word again. It's a difficult one.
It always hits me.
It hits because people are confused. They're looking at that button going, what should I do with it?
What does it say?
What is it? What is this word?
You can subscribe and you can ding that bell.
Ding that bell. But that's it from us, guys. So for now, that's it from me. That's it from Stephen.
I'm broken by the subscribe.
He's glad he doesn't have to say that word again. But yes, guys, have a great one, and we'll see you tomorrow for the race review podcast. So for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.